Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar, Faith Organizing for Liberation. People are starting to hop online with us. So give us a couple of minutes so everybody can join. Thank you for those who are already joining on. So hang on a second while more people can join. Thank you. Good afternoon for those who've joined. This is Miriam Noriega with the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity. We are going to start the webinar in a couple of minutes. So we're going to wait for more people to join. In the meantime, while we are waiting, I would like for you all to tell us where you're coming from. What you're going to see right now is a poll where you can tell us where you're coming from, and then hopefully this will let us know who is on the webinar. In this moment, you will probably be seeing a poll on your screen, and that way you can start clicking to tell us know where you're joining us from. Great. We see that we have people from the Bay Area joining, some folks from Central Valley. Thank you for those who are joining from the Los Angeles region. We also have people coming in from the region of the Inland Empire. So a great diversity throughout the state of California. We're so excited that all of you are here with us in this day. So we will also like to ask if you are representing a specific organization, congregation, or yourself. So if you will see another poll now also on your screen, if you want to participate, just to get a good idea of if there's specific groups you're joining, that'd be great. Thank you. All right. So we have a nice balance here where good portion of you are, if you can see the poll results, part of you are coming representing a congregation, others an organization, and also just yourselves. So we're so happy to know that you are here to get educated, as well as hopefully sharing this information with those communities that you're here to share the results. Thank you. So we're going to start. Welcome to this first statewide webinar that our organization, Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, is hosting. My name is Miriam Noriega. I am the program director of this organization. And with us, we will be hearing also various staff, which will coming on at different moments of this PowerPoint presentation. To begin, I'm going to just go over some housekeeping things so you all know how to engage and participate in this webinar if it is your first time. All of you, as you notice, are on mute, which you will mostly just be hearing my voice and any of the staff that will be joining as in this webinar. However, you can engage with the content by typing in your Q&A, your questions in a Q&A box that you will see at the bottom of the screen at any moment of this webinar. We will be answering your questions in 2 specific moments in the webinar, and you will see that when a slide comes up that says questions and answers. If you have any questions regarding troubleshooting with this webinar, you can also have those questions. You can also type those questions in the box below, in the same Q&A box below. And of course, like we were mentioning, this webinar is being recorded, and will be posted on our website afterwards, so you can share this with anybody you would like to share. In this moment together, we will hopefully be presenting 3 specific subjects that will help you understand, 1, more organizations and the framework that we bring, 2, to learn the most up-to-date information about the new law that California has to end private prisons and immigration detention in the state of California, and we'll also walk you through concrete strategies that is about liberating folks, advocating to end the expansion of immigration, and how you can invite others to join our organization's effort as well. Like I mentioned, this is our first statewide webinar, and some of you are also getting to know our organization. So I would like to share a little bit about you, a little bit about us and what our mission and goals are. For those of you who have gotten to know us, we have a very special mission, statement that says that we believe that every person is sacred across all bars and borders. We work to end the criminalization of people of color by educating on the root causes of incarceration, immigration, detention, and deportation. We do this through 2 specific methods of changing the mainstream narrative and developing the leadership. We also work together to build a California where the humanity reaches its fullness and all participation is met. And we hope that every person is honored and restored. Our organization works from a model called the faith-rooted organizing model. This frames all the aspects of our work. We use this because we believe that faith values of various traditions bring a unique value to peace building and compassionate solidarity to the social justice movements. We mobilize throughout the state of California, from congregations to organizations and individuals. We believe that the faith community has an important role in the social justice movement but we also work with different sectors across the movement, such as legal advocacy organizations, grassroots organizations, and other organizations that give direct services. Our organization practices this faith-rooted model with a specific framework that we would like to invite you all to also join us. This framework is called Mend the Past, Heal the Present, and Transform the Future. To mend the past, what we mean is to address the root causes of institutional racism of this country that has formed a punitive incarceration and justifies it by racially scapegoating the people of color and immigrants into a narrative that is of criminals. What we mean by healing the present is to liberate and accompany people who are most impacted by incarceration, whether it be in prisons or in detention centers, so that with them, we learn how the private prison system colludes with policy, economy, and the mainstream news. This is how we can better advocate for true changes in the system through the policies. Finally, what we mean by transforming the future is really to create a vision of the beloved community where people can really thrive in where they are and everybody is interdependent. As you can see, we practice this collective liberation in 3 different regions. And we've already been working in this aspect in the Bay Area in 2018, when we were supporting families to reunite with their loved ones who were in detention after the West County Immigration Detention Center was closed. We worked alongside the families with campaigns called the Freedom Campaigns, which meant we engaged the community to support in bond fundraisers, to pack the court, and send letters of support. Overall, we were able to help 25 families be reunited after that detention center was closed. In Los Angeles, we are part of the Reform LA Coalition, and in 2019, we were attending, along with other organizations, to city council meetings and board of supervisor meetings to support the efforts to stop new jail construction and advocate for mental health services. And this year, we are continuing to support this region in promoting a measure that provides supervision from the community on the sheriff. And in the Inland Empire, we are proud to have been visiting the Adelanto Immigration Detention Center with a lot of support of volunteers who have been trained by our organizer there and learning how and to support immigrants to be released. We will be able to share an experience of someone that we supported later today in this webinar. And also, we were learning that ICE was planning to build a detention center for children, and we, along with faith leaders, organized quickly to stop the planning and to promote that any form of detention or incarceration is immoral. So we have been working throughout the year on the effort of ending incarceration, both on the immigration section and the mass incarceration. But in this specific webinar, we are about to introduce more specifically about the new law of California. And for this, I'll introduce Deborah Lee, our Executive Director.
Hi, everyone. I'm really glad that everyone has joined us today and want to pick up for the center part of this webinar and give you all a recap of why AB 32 was such a key piece of legislation that we worked on, and historic in many ways, and also why it has received a historic backlash. And then we'll move on to the 3rd section about what we can do and what we're inviting you all to join us in doing. So AB 32, as you know, was a really important intersection. Many of you helped us support and promote this bill. So I want to thank everyone for the efforts that were taken in the last few months. This is a really important intersectional bill that addressed the issue of incarceration and immigration detention in the state of California by talking about what kind of treatment we expect that all California residents can receive, and also what kind of an economy do we want to have here in this state. I want to begin by providing a little bit of context for, hold on a second, a little context of AB 32, just to place the organizing efforts around AB 32 in some historical context. Many of you know California has been at a very powerful period of criminal justice reform, backed by growing awareness and demand from the public that we need criminal justice reform and start reversing the horrendous decades that have led to massive over-incarceration in California prisons, California being the leader of incarceration for many decades. So this pressure to address the inhumane conditions, overcrowding, and also respond to the organizing of prisoners themselves who are engaged in hunger strikes and other kinds of organizing to draw attention to what was happening to them. So this led to a series of bills that have been passed, both propositions as well as legislation that have been passed in the last several years that have started to move California towards decarceration. I've listed some of those laws there, and what some of these laws did, just in a broad sweep, was to reduce the prison population, reducing over-sentencing, decriminalizing drug use and drug addiction, towards treating drug use as addiction and other responses to it besides criminalizing it, reducing the number of incarcerated juveniles who are being tried as adults as well. There is still definitely a long way to go in the process of deincarceration in our state, and in downsizing the prison population. But that process is underway, and there is less and less need for private prisons to be used for overflow, because we are moving in the opposite direction if we can follow through it by implementing laws that have already passed and continuing to pass other laws that move us into this direction. So the other important context was that California had also led the nation in privatization of the prison industry, which has kind of taken over the whole country, where services like prison services have been privatized, not just in running private prisons, but so many other levels: commissary, phone service, transportation around the prisons. So I think this other issue of privatization raises questions of why we're contracting to private companies at all, and involving an economy and profit in this business. One of the main concerns, of course, is that corporations have incentives that are driven by the bottom line and the demands of shareholders versus other more collective public concerns and values that we might hold, that might include family ties, community ties, well-being of people, restoration, and successful reentry into society. One other important, just one other mention around the privatization, just to recall us back to another time. In 2016, the Obama government actually issued a memorandum planning the phase out of private prisons by letting contracts expire and scaling back, citing that they were less safe and poor in quality. So that was a really important national watermark, but that has been reversed in 2017 by President Trump and Jeff Sessions. So the third context that I want to share, that this process of deincarceration in California holds a major contradiction. And that contradiction exists for non-citizens in the prison system, people who are deemed suitable for parole and who are released if they are immigrants, born in another country, instead of being released back into their families and communities, are instead transferred to ICE detention. And this prison to ICE pipeline has become one of the easiest ways for ICE to feed people into their prisons. In addition to that, I want to say this whole movement around decarceration in California, there's also been a lot of important organizing that many of you have been involved with us on in the immigrant rights arena, which has been to limit the ICE dragnet in California, such as the Trust Act, the California Values Act, that tried to limit and reduce cooperation between local and state government authorities with federal immigration authorities, saying that the function of local law enforcement and state law enforcement is separate and distinct and different and should not be involved at all in the business of tracking down people for in terms of their immigration status. So that has been a really important context. Leading up, why did we have to do AB 32? That there has been an enormous rise in immigration detention, kind of an unprecedented rise, higher than any other time in our history. Every president before Trump has contributed to immigration detention, so it's not a new thing, but it has grown exponentially. There are now 55,000 people who are in detention on any given night in our country, which includes individuals and includes parents, families, children, long-term residents who've lived among us for decades, and also newcomer asylum seekers who are all being detained. 70% of immigrants are being held in for-profit prisons. So the Dignity Not Detention Coalition began 3 years ago in trying to figure out how could this be limited in the state of California. And several laws were passed to stop the growth and expansion of detention facilities through a moratorium on all new contracts between California cities and ICE. It also required the Attorney General to be monitoring all public and private immigration detention facilities in California. So because of this sort of limiting the power of detention in California, the private prison industry and ICE were finding ways to get around the laws that have been trying to box them in. And that has been to completely get out of public contracts with ICE and instead contract directly with the for-profit prisons. So this is where AB 32 comes in, and the move on behalf of our state to say that no contracts should be renewed. It'd be able to be renewed that the private prisons operating in or detention centers operating in the state of California. And many of those contracts were set to expire in 2020. Even as ICE was trying to find new facilities, there was a great urgency to pass a bill that would stop them from creating any new facilities or beds in our state. Right, so this fall, summer and fall, signed into law October 11th was the AB 32, which prohibited on the criminal legal system side of things, it prohibited CDCR, the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, from entering into any new contracts with a for-profit prison, and that all of the use should be phased out by 2028. Again, the reliance of CDCR on private prisons has been going down because the prison population slowly is getting less. So that was one part of it. And then the other part was that it would prohibit all other kinds of for-profit detention, such as immigration detention, from entering any new contracts or renewals. And this is really important after January 1st. So I want to say a little bit about the case for abolition, why we as the faith community are part of this, part of this work to end incarceration and end immigration detention. And important part of it is that we have to unmask the lie about incarceration and detention and uproot the system. There's a lie around all of these systems, the lie that it says that it's a deterrence, that it makes us safer, that somehow through cruelty and punishment, there's healing. These are all lies. And that we really have to address solutions that understand trauma, understand restorative justice, understand accountability in a way that doesn't deprive and diminish the humanity, the core humanity of any person. The other important thing is about reducing beds. Sometimes people would say, well, if you reduce beds in California, doesn't that mean we're just going to move people to Texas or to another state? And I think it's important to know that the more beds they have, they will fill it, and they will find some way to fill it with one group or another group. And that it is really important. I mean, one of the main concerns of the federal government around AB 32 is that, oh, well, that means we're going to have all this extra expense if we have to move people. Well, this is part of putting into the equation the true cost of what it means to be caging people. So I don't want to diminish that there will be, you know, that if there are transfers, that does make it difficult, currently make it difficult for families or for legal access. But I think we have to commit ourselves to supporting people everywhere and anywhere, and that our concern doesn't just stop because they're not within 10 miles of our house or even within our state, but this is part of an important step in eradicating this concept that incarceration and caging is the answer. We need to understand that these systems were developed as a means to control communities of color, suppress democracy, maintain white rule, and have had a devastating, destructive effect on families and communities intergenerationally. So just to share that, yet there's also been concern around what about the jobs issue, the jobs that are attached to the prison economy, and we do need to speak out as a faith community to build economies that are not built on the suffering of others, that's not built on stripping freedom or stripping families apart, but towards a moral economy where we can, if we reinvested all the billions of dollars that we're putting towards enforcement, that we're putting towards incarceration, that we're putting towards militarizing the border, there are so many other kinds of job creation and so many other kinds of human need that can be addressed, housing and education. So we want to continue to promote the idea that we want not just alternatives to incarceration, because there's already concern in the criminal justice world that there are insidious ways to incarcerate people without prisons, something called e-carceration through technology. But we were pushing for alternatives to oppression and alternatives to forced migration. So just to give you a little bit of context of who's behind pushing the law of AB 32, Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity is one of the core members of this coalition of organizations that are here. And I want to lift up, we are the only faith network that's at this table, and we see it as our role to connect other faith communities across the state of California to help us harness our power as the faith community. These are a listing of several of the things that many of you joined in with us to do this last year to get AB 32 passed. The signatures, letters, phone calls, and other kinds of advocacy, and that's what we want to continue going forward. So a quick update. So what's happened since? As you know, the January 1st, the law was to take effect, and what happened was there was a lot of maneuvering that happened in the last 2 weeks before the end of the year, before that law took effect, to undermine the law and circumvent it. So 1 week after the law was passed, ICE did release a request for bids for new detention centers to rewrite the existing contracts that were set to expire in 2020 and created new 5-year contracts, renewable up to 15 years for the existing private facilities. It also sought to expand immigration detention in our state through these contracts. So contracts were awarded for 7 private facilities, ultimately proposing to increase detention beds in the state. Here's an image, GEO, of the 10 private prisons in the state of California, 7 of them are operated by GEO. These are the ones that were recontracted right before the law took effect in December. The darker blue ones, as you can see, Golden State, Central Valley, Desert View, were all prisons leased by the California Department of Corrections from GEO to house California prisoners, state prisoners. And the 2 light green ones, or Mesa Verde and Adelanto, were currently holding immigrants. So those were already immigration detention facilities. So what GEO is trying to do in these, the dark blue, the 3 prisons, is to repurpose those prisons to expand the immigration detention capacity. Because as I said, the prison population is going down. So they're trying to repurpose these to keep them open by now using them as immigration detention facilities. So those are in that region there. There's also a couple other companies at play who also did some recontracting. This one is down in the Imperial region. And then this facility near the San Diego border, near San Diego. So the total cost of the contracts is in $6.5 billion of our tax dollars that are increasing, unnecessary detention and imprisonment and suffering, in ways that are really unacceptable to us and as decent human beings. So this is some of the concern. I do want to mention that there was a California letter from members of Congress in California. Zoe Lofgren, Kamala Harris, Senator Feinstein all signed on, as well as others, challenging the way these contracts were done right at the end of the year, arguing that they were done in violation of federal contracting law. So addition to that, what else has happened? The GEO group also sued the state of California. They are arguing that this is going to be a huge loss of future revenue to them. They could lose more than $4 billion in capital investment. And then also just last week, the US government also sued the state of California, AB 32, saying that the state shouldn't be able to tell the federal government who it can contract with. So these two lawsuits the GEO lawsuit will be heard April 16th in the courts in San Diego. And so that will be a very important timeline for us to look at to see the legality of the law, but also in our view, the legality of the contracts that they rush through at the end of the year. So I want to make sure you all know that this doesn't mean we're stopping one bit, that the resistance that the law has provoked speaks to the power of the direction of this law and the challenge that we are making towards incarceration, immigration detention, and private prison industry. So it's really important that we continue to move forward. The shareholders meeting of GEO raised the issue of this is making their future prospects unstable, and that was part of the reason why they've acted so aggressively. So there are 4 big strategies of resistance right now, and we're going to get into specifically what they look like, but I just wanted to point out to you kind of what they are. The lawsuits, just keeping track of that. There are legal teams in the coalition that are looking at that. There's also how do we stop the expansion and repurposing of the facilities to expand detention beds? How do we close the existing immigration detention facilities? And how do we work for liberation of those who are inside, who can continue to tell their stories and inspire all of us to fight for their freedom?
So I think this is Gayla King, the Northern California Faith Organizer. We're a little bit behind, so I think what we're going to do is just invite folks to type in any questions, and we'll respond to all questions at the end.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hilda Cruz. I am the Southern California Faith Organizer specifically, in the counties of Riverside and San Bernardino County. And it is my pleasure today to introduce you to Mina Solomon, a young man who unfortunately came to the US with a visa during the early implementation of the Muslim ban, which we all know, and his visa was not accepted. And because of that, he ended up inside the detention facility. And before I turn over the mic to Mina, I just wanted to say, in my visiting with him, I saw this resilience in him and his willingness to see the injustice, not only the injustices done to him, but the others, that led him to his wanting to become a fierce advocate for those who are still in detention. And so, Mina, it is a pleasure to have you here joining us, and I invite you to share your story now.
Hi, Hilda.
Hello, Mina.
Hello, Hilda. How is everybody? Thank you for having me today, and let me thank you and thank you all the organization for all kind of support you're showing for me, and let me share some of my story for the other, so they can see how much it make big difference for someone like me who was detained. Like you said, I was coming here for United States by my tourism visa. It happened in May 2018, and for a reason, ICE didn't let me go in, and they canceled my visa in the airport LAX. So, and they asked me to go back to my original country, Egypt. And when I speak about my fear to go back to my country, in that moment, they put a cuff in my hand, my waist, and my leg, and they sending me for the detention center, GO at Adelanto, which I spent 18 months. And during my journey, I asked for asylum, and my asylum case has been denied, and now on my appeal process. During my detention time, I was having some medical condition, and it got worse for the poor medical treatment they offer, such like delay or neglecting the request. And moreover than that, I get injured inside the facility. As one of the guard officer, he beat me mentally and he beat physically till the point I get injured, and I spend the upcoming 6 months on a wheelchair, and now I'm using a cane. During all these medical condition, I was recommended by more than orthopedic to have a surgery in my shoulder, and they confirmed it, but the delay after delay trying to push the time to didn't get this surgery. Eventually I didn't get it, but what I suffer physically, but it more mentally during all this journey. But one day, and it was a remarkable day, when you, Hilda, and your friend, you show up and you come to visit me, and it was the first time for me to someone to come and visit me. And when they notified that I have a visit, I was asking myself, who's coming today for me? And when I saw you, even after this visit, I keep asking why people like you come to one like me and you don't know me. But it was a start of my journey, and I call this journey is a journey of faith and hope. Because without faith, that I will be outside one day. No, I don't know how or why, but this faith keep inside me. Once I pray for God and sharing all my thoughts, and you give me hopes that a good people come, a good people like a light in the darkness, inside the concrete wall or bars, and gave me hope that people outside they care. They show with all kind of help and support as much as they can, as visit, as offering full cone for someone who can share prayer, or can sending money or a cards with good words for encouragement, or even when my situation, I get a bond, like a bill amount of money I have to pay, so I go out, and it's required a sponsor paper, and this bond it was $20,000. I don't have a fund to pay that, but you, Hilda, and your organization, you're helping me a lot to connect me with a lawyer, as a free lawyer, to get a legal advice, or other organization trying to fund or fundraising my bond till the day I get out. But it's very important. It's not as much as the money is important, but the paper. Because a lot of people here, they don't have a family, so they don't have a sponsor paper, so they cannot be outside. Even the freedom is not free. We have to pay a lot of money to go outside. And once I'm outside, the journey is not ended, but it's still a lot of it challenging. Like I'm trying to find a housing, or a family can host me for a short time of life till I get stand on my feet. Challenging food, transportation, and all these the organization still offer for me, and people like me with the resources of least have all of kind of support. As an asylum seeker in this country, I believe that I can believe freely and safe, and that's kept me keep going on and on, pursuing my dream that in one time in my life I will be free man, live in free land. I can do, and I can live a normal and be a good citizen. This is my dream, and I'm still going on. And today, when I'm outside, after all this journey, as I call it, is a journey of hope and faith. I can do that by myself, only with God's help and the help of the good people like you. And I'm encouraging everyone, wherever you can offer, or you can join this movement and this organization. It matters for someone like me who's detained for a long time behind the bar. So show your support and your help, and remember that it make a big difference for someone need your help. Thank you, Helga, for let me share a little bit about my story, and you encouraged me to keep going on this journey.
Thank you very much, Mina. That was a wonderful testimony. Have a great day.
Thank you, and you too. Bye-bye.
So as you've heard from our friend Mina, who is from Egypt, and we as an organization collaborated with many volunteers and visitors to support one person to be released, to visit and be released, and support in the post-release process. This is what we're going to go into in this next section, is what exactly are the strategies for faith communities or you who have organizations that we can work together to really support many more people like Mina. In this section, different members from our staff will be joining and will be introducing how you can get involved.
Great. So this is Gayla again from Northern California. One of the first strategies that we are really encouraging the faith community as well as all communities to use is to really commit to decriminalizing our language. Language is a powerful and effective strategy that has been used to really justify inhumane policies and practices among both immigrant communities as well as communities impacted by incarceration. So this table, which I want to give a shout out to John Rodney, who's been one of our communications experts, really is emphasizing what are the labels and the words that we should really not be using, which is what you'll see on the left-hand side. And instead, we're inviting people to continue to center humanity, to center people, and use descriptors of what the actions may have been. So this is something we're encouraging folks to do in their one-on-one conversations, in any communications you're doing in your broader community, your faith community, or any media you might be writing, op-eds. The other thing to point out is just this ongoing pitting of communities against one another. So the phrases of treated like criminals, immigrants aren't criminals is very divisive. And so we also really encourage that we not use this and not feed into this false narrative of good versus bad immigrant. And last, we just encourage that we're constantly connecting what's happening to the bigger system so that we are talking about how the private prisons are a part of this larger machine of mass incarceration. So that's our first strategy. Thank you.
We're having some tech issues, or we're trying to bring on our next staff. Larry, you can, yes, thank you, Larry.
Hello, everyone. This is Reverend Foy with the Justice Out program in Los Angeles, Justice Not Jails. Again, thank all of you for joining us. Early on, a colleague, Miriam, talked about the framework. Mend the past, build the present, transform the future. And this framework invites us to practice using faith values to define the vision and a bigger purpose as to why we advocate for the abolition of the private prison system, and also why we are engaged in an effort to liberate and accompany people who are incarcerated by them. So we want to encourage you to use faith-rooted messaging in communicating in our communications with around AB 32. There are two values, faith values that we'd like to uplift, and that is, as you can see on your screen or to your left, first of all, that every human being has divine worth, regardless of the color of their skin, their immigration status, or their worst action. And that secondly, everyone deserves justice, compassion, equal rights, and humane treatment. And this language is rooted in our sacred text, and it's rooted in the sacred text of the Torah, as well as in the Christian text in the New Testament, language that talks about freeing the prisoners, welcoming migrants with acts of hospitality, and practicing forgiveness to restore. And then our sacred text calls us to dismantle systems of oppression and harm, to heal the breaches in our society. So we offer this to you and hope that you will incorporate this language from sacred texts as well as your own sacred texts as we move forward in this effort.
Thank you, Larry.
So the second important thing that faith communities can do is that to be involved with some local organizing efforts that are happening right now to stop the expansion of beds and this repurposing of the CDCR private prisons into immigration detention centers. Those, in order to do that, they do have to go through city commissions, city planning commissions in the city of McFarland and in Adelanto. What is important action you all can take, no matter where you live, is that you can submit a public comment. And in particular, we are looking for public comments of people who have experience of being incarcerated or detained, and why it's important to oppose the expansion of prison beds, relatives, friends, family members who also have had that experience, and allies who may have visited, written letters, or in other ways connected and know somewhat about what those conditions are like and what that experience is like. We want to really lift up and encourage the public officials in these very small towns who are experiencing great pressure from the private prison lobby to take courage, we'll be sending around as a follow-up to this whole webinar, a form where you can easily submit comments that we'll be sending on to those public officials.
This is Hilda again, and I just wanted to make sure that you guys all save the date. On April the 10th, we will be hosting a prayer service. This is Holy Week. When we celebrate Holy Week and also Passover, we're gonna be holding a prayer service in Adelanto. It has always been a way to witness as we seek a positive impact, to engage the public perception and change policies that will affect immigrants and the people incarcerated. And so that's part of our focus, is to come in front of Adelanto, invite you all to pray with us, and just be a witness and be present to those that are incarcerated inside. So please save the date, April the 10th, 2020. It'll be in the morning, and you will be sent more information and logistics through email. Thank you all.
So the next following three are strategies on actually how do we liberate those people who are still in immigration detention center, because it is currently the aspect of the new law that is currently being figured out. The first one is joining our program called Friends Afuera, which means Friends Outside. And this is a program you can join that we created because many detained immigrants face isolation as a consequence to unjust incarceration. Some of them are also separated from their families and have potential of just being inside for indefinite and prolonged times. So by you joining our program, you can become a friend on the outside and be part of that community support and help and find out how they can be released. For example, as Mina was saying, he does not have family here in the United States. He came and didn't have any connections until someone from the outside was in communication with them. And I know visiting a detention center sometimes it's a big task, but we can definitely write letters. And some of these folks, for the same reason not having support, really need financial assistance while their time is there. So we also ask people to make a monthly donation to their commissary accounts for the personal needs. If you are interested, the email you can reach out to our coordinator is on the below, but we will also continue to send more information after the webinar. There's two ways a person we have identified can be released specifically from immigration detention. The first is through bond. Many people have been granted by a judge to be released until they pay a bond. And these are really high prices, ranging from $1,500 to $30,000. Mina's shared that his was $20,000. And this is extremely burden for the families who are low income of those people inside, or if they don't have anybody. So we are asking for the community to collectively fundraise so these bonds can be paid and these people can be released. This was very successful after the closure of the West County Immigration Detention Facility because collectively through this bond fundraising, we were able to release 25 people. So what this means is you can host a bond fundraiser in your home with friends or the community, whatever that looks like for you. And all the money we are partnering with Freedom for Immigrants. So any money that is collected will be sent directly to the bond fund that is coordinated by Freedom for Immigrants, and they will match people who are waiting to be released on bond. Also, after the webinar, our organization will be sending a toolkit of what exactly does it mean to host a bond fundraiser, which provides talking points, stories like Mina's that you can support. Another way we've identified a person can be released from immigration detention center is a sponsor. Mina also shared that that was what a key area he needed to be just released. Some people do have family on the outside, but their relatives don't qualify to be a legal sponsor. So we're asking for U.S. citizens who can just be a legal sponsor, which is required for someone to be released. Of course, this is case by case, but we have identified folks that need this. This specific type of sponsors that we're looking for does not require long-term housing. It really is just to sign a paper so that says you will be their sponsor so this person can be released. And again, because there's so many questions that come up from this specific type of support, we are planning to do a webinar on this strategy coming soon. So this is a summary of some strategies that we are inviting you to join our organization. And because there's a lot of information, I would like to invite you all to fill out this poll to tell us what are you most interested in. So on your screen, you will see a poll that we would like for you to fill out and tell us what of these 6 strategies are you most interested in. So take a moment, fill out this poll, let us know what is coming up for you all. Great, we see people are submitting their polls. We're almost there. Looks like the quick responses show that you are all very enthusiastic. And of course, for you, maybe saying, I want to know about everything. Well, you will afterwards. Right now, we're just wondering, what are you most interested in? Okay. So right now, we're going to see what the group is interested in. So if you all see, there is a quite amount of interest in all the areas. I'm glad to see a lot of people are interested in joining the Friends of Fuera because it is a bigger need that we have to identify who are the people who are inside, who are they, and how can we help them. So thank you all for sharing with one another what you're interested in. And again, it's nice to see that this is an interest across California.
So we just received a handful of questions. We're just going to address the 2 that are specific to AB 32. And so the first question is, do we know when the court hearing will be for the Trump versus State of California case? The second question pertains to the contracts that are now in violation of state law because of AB 32. Will those contracts be void or will they continue to be honored? And I'm assuming you mean the contracts between ICE and private prisons. So those questions I think should go to see if Deb or Miriam can answer. Which I think you're still muted. Deb or Miriam?
Yes, I'm sorry about that. That very question about the state and federal law and which takes precedent, that is the question of the court hearing in April. And it's kind of the core of the federal lawsuit, but also in the GEO lawsuit, it does raise the same issue that, that somehow California's blocking, somehow the federal government efforts around immigration. So that's one of the issues that will be on that April 16th hearing. In the meantime, they are continuing to go, they are in process of repurposing some of the new, some of the CDCR prisons and going forward with that. So there has not been an injunction yet. And so that, I think that answers both questions. We don't yet have a date on the federal court hearing. I also want to mention, I think some people had asked about, yes, the poll we just sent you, it did only allow you to pick one thing, the most important thing. We certainly hope that many of you will want to do more than one. That kind of leads me to what's happening next. We will be sending you all a follow-up email that will have a more extensive kind of way where you can register what you are ready to do, what you'd like more information to do. We'll be sending ways for you to follow up on each of these 6 things and additional information. So we ask you to please fill it out and get it back to us. There are also, this recording will be placed on our website. We ask you to share it with others, share it with your organization, your congregation, your group. So please, it'll be publicly available. And we'd like to, the purpose is really to get more people aware of the importance of this work and how they can be involved.
We also want to share some educational resources. This is just a small way to educate, but many times there's more news articles or literature that is already explaining more in depth and in detail of the new law. So there's a couple of news articles here. And then there's also a really good New York Times opinion piece by the author of the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander, which you see here, which really explains the roots of racism in both criminal justice systems and immigration systems. That we really would like for everybody to really continue to educate on what are these intersections, because it is true that this movement is taking up on a new phase, and we need one another for us to really free all of our brothers and sisters and no more incarceration. So we come to an end of our webinar. I want to give a special thank you to all the staff and our wonderful guest speaker, Mina, who shared his testimony. This work that has been ongoing since last year or a year and a half ago is only the beginning. And we're hoping that in this year, 2020, all of you will join our organization in these strategies of liberation, as well as inviting many more folks who were not able to join this webinar. And again, as Deborah mentioned, we will be following up with an email soon after this with more information. Thank you, everyone. And that concludes our webinar. Have a great day.